this is your host, Julia Napini. I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. In this show, we discuss the challenges of being successful in business while maintaining your integrity and staying true to yourself. Join me while I interview other professionals and share insights from life and experience. Let's talk about RingRx, our latest sponsor. RingRx is a high-quality, HIPAA-compliant telephone, text, and fax communications platform. They provide seamless, cost-effective communications for behavioral therapists, medical practices, hospitals, and other healthcare providers. RingRx is designed for modern healthcare environments. They offer customizable features like a phone app, automated patient outreach, voicemail, after-hours call routing, and top-quality desk phones. Try RingRx for free today at ringrx.com. And if you sign up using the code CLIMB, you'll get 15% off your monthly bill forever. Conditions apply. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Compassionate Climb podcast. We are on a roll here. I'm really enjoying talking about leadership, probably because that really resonates with the phase of my life that I'm in right now. And today we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of being a leader and how it can bring up all of your own stuff, but potentially ways to not let it get in the way of being the leader that you ultimately want to be. So, Layci Nelson, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is, what I talk about all the time is leadership. So I am super excited to be here. And nothing's off limits. Ask me all the hard questions. Let's go.
Well, you had me on your show and put me on the spot, so it's only fair that we get to have a little role reversal there. So Absolutely. I would love to hear how leadership became such a focal point for you in your own career. So share your career climb with us and what it is that you do.
Okay, excellent. Well, right now, my current role is the CEO or technically president of the Transcend Leadership Collective, owner and founder. And it is a leadership and communication consultancy, not communications as in to the public, but how do you speak to be understood and how do you listen to understand communication? Mm-hmm. And that is definitely, if you would have asked 25-year-old me if this is what I would be doing now, 20 years later, there's no way I would have seen this coming as my path. So where did I get my start? Oh my gosh. Well, if we want to talk career start, I'm one of those people who've been working, since I basically was born. I babysat under the table and then did so many random jobs up until I was of a legal age to actually work. And I worked my way, put myself through school, first generation college student. And when I was in college, I found just this absolute fascination and love for sociology and psychology. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is fascinating. All of a sudden I had all these frameworks to make sense of a lot of my own upbringing. I grew up in a trailer court, very low income, and I was seeing how all of these puzzle pieces fit together. But very quickly I thought I was going to double major in that. So I was racking up the credits. I started though to get really frustrated because all we would talk about was analyzing it. And we wouldn't talk about, well, okay, but how do you change the system? And that desire to actually figure out how do we change the societal impacts, the systemic things that are shaping the world in a way that isn't healthy, isn't helping the whole person thrive. How do we do that? And that led me to my path to get my degree in social work. So I actually have my bachelor's of social work and then a really, really strong double minor, almost major in sociology and psychology. So that was my pathway there and like my introduction to the concept of I want to help, I want to do something different. And my emphasis in social work was always, in my degree, it was in my capstone project, everything was always around the macro. I liked the macro, but the one-to-one was good, but I was so hungry to have that bigger impact. Because I saw that it could, changing a system is going to have more effect than on hopefully more people. And so that was really attractive to me from the very beginning of my career path. And so my first job out of school, out of college, I did gang intervention and prevention work. I worked with some homeless youth. And I started gaining the connections to start getting around tables that were working on the systemic issues. This is when I lived in Tacoma, Washington. And I very quickly I was that fun anomaly of like, I was young. I looked young. I looked younger than I actually was. And I was a woman in a time where it was starting to be a good thing. Like, looking back, I'm like, I was tokenized for sure in some degree because I was this young woman that, let's get her around the table, but not give her anything to eat. That's another episode. So anyways, where I was able to see like, oh, this is how the sausage gets made, right? Like I was like, oh, okay. So this is where things are happening. These are how systems are formed. And I loved it. I quickly was recognized as being skilled, and clearly I talk a lot. So I was a director of youth services for a major nonprofit by the time I was 26. So wow. I was a and I was running a team. I grew it very quickly. By the time I left the organization, I had a team of over 18, big budget, multi-million-dollar budget. But it also was the beginning of me realizing that just because you're skilled in some areas doesn't mean you're going to know how to actually be a good leader. And I had no idea how to lead well when in that position of leading a team of 18 highly passionate people. People in youth development work are nothing if they are not passionate. So lots of passion, lots of big ideas, lots of personalities, and a 26-year-old me having no idea what I was doing when it came to running a team. And so that really was the birth of me going, I had this moment of having a completely dysfunctional team that we were getting the job done, but behind closed doors, it was awful as far as some levels of toxicity that were happening. I could easily say, well, it was the team I inherited. It was, but I inherited them a whole year. I let all that stuff go on for a whole year prior to like having my wake up moment of when I had a person on the team that was one of the more unhealthy people, pretty low self-awareness. And she just in front of me completely destroyed another team member, attacked them emotionally and personally, just ripped them apart. And in that moment, and I was right there and she did it. And in that moment, I just had that gut punch of, oh my God, this is my fault. Like I have allowed this to get to this point and I can't keep doing this. I also was burning out. I was in the throes of burnout, had grown programs really quickly, a lot of stress. I didn't know what I was doing. Like my hair was falling out. I was losing weight the not healthy way, like not sleeping. Like, do I know what my hair follicles actually feel like from cortisol? Anyways, all of that, I was not
in a coughing attack here.
Oh, all right. Totally not in a good place. Good. And that was the beginning of me going, this is my fault. And where I'm at right now is not sustainable. And I can't keep doing this if I don't figure out leadership. And I know there's a better way to do it because I had, thankfully, women ahead of me that I had watched in this space just thrive and build these beautiful careers that were decades older than me. So I knew the climb was even harder for them. And that was like, okay, this is possible, but I have no idea what I'm doing. And I totally surrendered. I went from that awareness to, sat in the awareness for a little bit longer than I should have. But the acceptance to action, which as we know is the fastest, that was just like, it was like a switch just flipped. And I was like, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. And I could have said, I'm done with this and I'm going to walk away. I'm a fighter. I'm an Enneagram.
Right. I'm thinking that challenger in you.
And I said, no, I'm going to commit to figuring this out. And I owe it to who's left because she was let go. I owe it to who's left. And I owe it to the 1,000+ kids, young adults in our program to figure this out. So that was the beginning.
So it sounds like the turning point moment was really seeing it happen right in front of you. Both people kind of having this interaction and seeing how it affects one. But then I'm sure probably realizing that the person who was initiating a lot of that had a lot more going on behind the scenes. And so what a growth opportunity. So where did things go from there, from the turning point moment to how things started to shift?
Well, I immediately asked for help and from people around me and was like, I don't know what I'm doing with leading. And the hard part was I was one of those people, I looked really good on paper, right? And part of the reason that I was falling apart is because I was trying to carry everything all by myself. And it just got to the point where it was no longer sustainable. And so just saying out loud, like, I can't, I need help. I need training. And I just started to bury myself in books about leadership, and I started to figure out what do I like, what do I don't like. I loved servant leadership before when it was just in the thought leadership circles and it hadn't become a new norm yet. This was 20 years ago. So it was really, really fun to watch that develop over time. I reached out to other men and women leaders that I admired, and I gave myself permission to be honest and say, I actually am not doing nearly as well as you think I am. And that was really huge and felt really scary and vulnerable. And a lesson I keep having.
As an 8, I can't even imagine what that must have felt like for you.
Well, that will tell you how miserable I was. I was choosing between two pains, right? Like, they're both going to feel like I want to die, but which one is going to make me feel that way a little bit less? And so it was definitely a lesson in vulnerability and just being okay with not being okay. And realizing that did not equate to failure or letting people down. So.
Ooh, okay. So there's so much I want to dig in. So I definitely want to come back to that whole concept of failure. And was that really, truly the case? And I think it's situations where you learn something and there's a takeaway. No.
Yeah.
But the piece about you immediately took this as an opportunity, sought out some support, some information. You were going to make it your mission to turn this around, which is so inspiring. But I'm curious how long you remained in that position and how everybody responded to this change in your style that I'm sure ensued from everything that transpired.
Oh, well, okay. Yes. First of all, it was really fast because, again, I'm very intense. So when I make my mind up, we're just going to do it. And so it was very noticeable. Great questions. And my team at that time was not 18 people yet. It was smaller at that time. And they all freaked out because they were so scared. They're like, who are you? What is happening? Are we all going to get fired now? And so I mean, literally, those were their questions. They were scared. And the first thing I did was reassure them that if they were walking the line, they were going to have plenty of notice unless it was agreed.
Okay.
And then I also let them know and apologized for letting them down and not leading in the way that that was needed. I didn't have exactly all of this language. It was not eloquent. I mean, I was like 26, 27, stumbling through
but
it. But
humbling all the same.
Oh, and I was younger than everyone I was supervising on my team. There's also that dynamic that was happening. So just and then just assuring them, like, if you are in this and you are committed and you want to be the kind, like, I had to help us establish new norms. Again, I didn't have all this language yet. So I'm like, we got to figure out how to treat each other. Has not been working. What we've been doing hasn't been working for a year, the year I've been here. And getting my boss to, I mean, the other hard part was that we were the when the fun developers have to do the dog and pony show, like, we were the dog and pony show because we were the youth program. And so our getting my boss to understand, and he actually is one of my very favorite leaders I've ever worked for. But just be like, hey, we're not going to look so bright and shiny for a little bit because we've got some cleanup work to do. Like, we're going to meet our requirements, funders, but we're not going to look so bright and shiny for a little bit. And we just dug in.
So is this undertaking primarily your responsibility, or did people come into the mix to help you right the ship?
I had guidance, but it was my responsibility. There was no, this is my dog. There was no consultant. There was no,
wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, okay, kid, got your back. I'm supporting you. Go, let me help you.
Best of luck out there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what were the biggest go-tos for the foundational steps? Because it sounds like you really needed to go from the ground up and do a total revamp. Yeah. And so what were the biggest resources that were helpful in developing those foundational steps?
Great question. And not everyone can do this, but I, again, had one of the best people I've ever had the opportunity to work for. And part of the precursor to all of this was, and I knew I was in the throes of burnout, didn't have burnout language, but I knew that's what it was.
Yeah.
It wasn't sustainable, but it was before my big moment. But I never traveled much at all growing up. I didn't travel in college. I didn't have the opportunity. My boss knew that. He was the person who grew up. He was an international kid. He grew up traveling all over due to the work of his parents. So he really valued it. That background to say, I was able to, so this was shortly after 9/11 when nobody wanted to fly for a while. And there was this deal that I saw. This is going to give away my age. I already did because I told you 9/11, but it was on the news. It was on the news. And I saw this little clip on the news of round trip tickets from SeaTac to Heathrow for $98 round trip. And I was like, what? Excuse me? So long story longer, I talked to my boss, and my husband was able to take the time, and the two of us, we didn't have kids yet. The two of us, my boss said, you can go and you have plenty of time to plan it. And I took a whole month off. So I had a 1 month sabbatical, which, looking back, I'm like, I don't know why I ever thought that I wasn't doing okay in my career, because first of all, the audacity to ask that. And secondly, he said yes. But he was like, yeah, you can do it. You can go. And so he gave me the permission to I took time unpaid, some of it, but to take the time, and having that space was huge because it allowed me to realize just how dysregulated I'd been for so long, and how much stress I was carrying around and weight. And I got some distance from it, and I could go, and I could really be able to see the forest for the trees for the first time in a long time, with the dynamics of the team and where I was not doing so hot, and the things I was proud of, and the things that I was like, this, I was able to figure out, this is what's not sustainable. So how do I change this? Because I had space. And when I came back, shortly after I came back, that situation happened. And then I had the internal gumption and resources I needed to go, no more. Because this is part of what is a big part of what is not sustainable is the toxicity in the team. So, and then
so it sounds like the biggest theme is you kind of starting with you, but not even necessarily realizing, like you said, how dysregulated you were, and how taking a step away, kind of getting in that helicopter and seeing the big picture was really necessary.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't want to sound like, oh, I was so wise. Like, oh no, it all just happened to line up. God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, like it all finally was aligned in that timing where it unfolded, and all the pieces, just the timing worked beautifully. And I know not everyone can, like I said, take a whole month away, but if you can even give yourself, 3-4 days where you don't look at anything that has to do with work. Because you have to remember, back then, I was completely unplugged. I was in a different time zone, on a different continent, and there was no cell phones you couldn't take your computer in your pocket, right? So it was just I literally just did not touch work for that time. And that I could not do that now at this point. I could, my team would be wonderful, but I don't know that I'd have the discipline. Although I did go to Iceland for a while last summer, and they did awesome. But
wow. Well, what a remarkable opportunity. And I think the point is really that even if it can't be on that grand scale, that taking some distance and some space and disconnecting is really important for all of us. So are you still at that company?
Oh, no. So I worked there for a couple more years after that, and then my husband got into his dream program for his doctorate, and we didn't have kids yet, and we decided, if we're going to do this, let's do this. Let's have a big adventure. I completely walked away from the job.
Wow.
And I was up for a promotion too. And my boss had he was not happy, but he was supportive and he understood. But I walked away. We moved to Montana. I didn't know a single person in town except my husband. And he did his doctorate program, and I got to start over building my career again. And I had no connections. Nobody knew who I was. Not a lot of gang intervention and prevention work happening in Montana. So
they just wrangle them out there.
Yeah. So my circles weren't there, it just was not, it was a total culture shock. But I ended up learning so much about myself and about how much I had placed my worth in my performance. So it was another really good, painful and good learning opportunity. And I ended up, in my time there, I ended up at the United Way, and then I ended up working for the county doing, I was overseeing the Missoula Forum for Children and Youth, and got to do some work there. And that was a really good experience as well. Working in the public sector was good for my overall understanding. And I ended up getting to oversee a team again, and I was a lot better at it this time. So
well, I would also love a snapshot of where things were right before you left the previous company. So
okay, so before I left the previous company, my program had gone from a team of 5 to 7 We were now a team of 18. The budget, I think, tripled in that time.
Wow.
We were able, I've never struggled with vision casting. I've struggled with a lot of things, but I got the vision casting part down. So we were able to go, oh, this is where we want to take the program, and had all this newfound energy and growing confidence, and surrounded by amazing people, worked with the best grant writer in the entire world. I will stand by that. She was one of my mentors, and we are connected. And she and I were a great team. I also built an amazing team as I was bringing people on. I got a lot better figuring out how to hire around core values instead of hiring around just what does it say on the resume. And I got a lot better at interviewing and bringing my team into it, not doing it in a vacuum. So all those things helped. So when I left, we had like tripled in size. We were serving, my turn to cough. Allergy season. We were serving thousands of youth all over the county. Wow. And I was absolutely loving it. I mean, did I still have stress? Was I a perfect leader? Yes, I still had stress. Nope, wasn't a perfect leader. Still not a perfect leader, but I had grown a lot. My skills had grown a lot in a short window. I had really, I had really taken some nosedives that were painful, but really good in the long run for understanding what it actually means to lead, and having to say out loud, like, I had no idea what I was doing. And I had caused harm at points. Like, not only did I not know what I was doing, my ignorance was the cause of harm. And knowing that's awful. Like, I never want to be in that position again. I want to be worthy of people actually following me. So, yeah.
What a remarkable transformation. So I'd love to hear, when you started over in Montana, what were the things that you did right out the gate that you feel really set you up for success in that position?
When I worked for the county, when I worked for the nonprofit there, for United Way, it was more of like a grants oversight position. And so I got to know some of the nonprofits in town. It was sitting on the other side of the fence, was like being on the funder side, which was a first for me. And so, but I didn't have a team I was supervising, but I definitely was wielding influence and making connections and all of that good stuff. Learning how to build and gain influence and all of that. And then when I moved over to the county, oh my gosh, what did I do differently? Oh, right away, we set up norms like, hey, how do we want it to feel to work together? What do you need from me? When you are under stress, what are the first signs that I should be looking for to offer you support? And then can I share with you, when I'm under stress, these are things, mistakes that I know are patterns for me. And I give you permission to interrupt those patterns when they, like, for example, I'm usually I still do this. My team now knows this. I'm a pretty decent communicator most of the time. However, when I get a million plates spinning, I go into hyper efficiency mode. And because I am just I'm going to get this done, this makes the most sense to do now, I will start taking things that aren't actually mine to do, but other like members of my team, and stepping on them, because I'm moving so fast that I just don't want to wait. So an example would be like, we are building out right now. This is a new way I screwed up, so it still happens. Right now with the Transcend Leadership Collective, we actually are building out a collective which we're going to have a Heart First certification for people that want to learn how to have Heart First leadership, which is our proprietary model, understanding how to have honest communication, healthy conflict, and build cultures of acceptance, respect, and trust. Those are just foundational to all of the rest of the work. And so we now are to the point where we have more work coming in than we can always manage with just our primary team. So we're building out the collective, which are other people that want to come in on 1099 that have areas of expertise that are in alignment with Heart First. And part of getting their certification is to gain the knowledge of what is Heart First leadership, and then do a 15-minute presentation demo, like at the end, that they film and send to us, and trying to respect everybody's time. You don't have to give a dissertation, but give us a demonstration. And then so this is all rolling out at the same time as we had an acquisition from another part of a program in the community that wanted to move from the house they were at to under our umbrella. So that was happening. Plus all of our regular contracting stuff. Plus it's May-cember. So it's May, and my kids, I've got 2 middle schoolers. Life is super busy right now. All that going on. And I realized, we made this and I'm having lots of conversations every day with different people doing different parts of this. And I'm realizing, we have a handful of people already wanting their certification. We're told they're part of our rollout group. We told them we would get those videos to them and have that up and ready by this time. And then I just start launching into the plan on Voxer with my team of how I'm going to get all this done. And my director of workshops and education and training was she upwardly managed me quite deftly. It was very good. So I just want to check in with you and to see if the plans have changed, and if you want me to reorganize my priorities, because I had actually set aside a lot of time and energy in my plan to do this, because I thought our last big planning session, I was understanding this was going to be on my plate to execute, and you were just going to approve. And I was like, I kid you not, Julia, I had totally forgotten completely, because I was in go mode, right? Get it done. Yeah. We got all these things, and I know exactly, I was I know exactly what I would want him to say, and blah, blah, blah. And obviously it makes sense that the director of workshops, education, and training would be the person that's going to actually roll out these videos. But for some reason, my mind had been I'm going to get it done. And so when I let my team know then and now, when I'm under pressure, sometimes my brain just loses pieces of what we've talked about, and giving that full permission to do exactly what she did, to say, hey, I didn't know that was the plan. Wait a minute, what happened? It's so easy as leaders for us to not realize that an employee that didn't have that permission could have just been, well, I guess it changed now, and not feel like they had that permission to actually challenge me and say, wait, is that what you really want? Because that is not what we talked about. So,
So it sounds like, to bring it full circle, it really comes down to a lot of self-awareness, but it's also sharing with the people that are on your team, so that not only are you being vulnerable, but you're opening them up to also be able to share, so that you can use that to benefit the relationship and the work being done instead of a hindrance. So you've now created this environment, it seems like, where it's safe for people to question out of a place of curiosity instead of criticism. And then it can be a dialogue, and then there's a plan, because we are imperfect and things are going to happen, but it really all comes down to approach and the intention behind the approach. What would you say, kind of in summation, it has been the most helpful in leading a team, but also staying true to you?
That's a good question. Leading a team and staying true to myself has been the most impactful for me has been my willingness to be vulnerable, and my willingness to realize that I'm going to say sometimes, hey, I don't know how this is going to turn out.
Right.
I don't know if this is going to work, because what is business if it's not a grand experiment? And to let my team know, like, I might you're going to create something, and then 3 months later, you might have feelings of, why did I even do that? Because things completely flipped.
Sure.
And I want to hear when you're struggling with that. And I also want to set up the mindset that for all of us, that we're never going to just be done. Like, there's no such thing as like, oh, one touch or no more touches on that. Like, everything is always evolving. And asking for a change in something isn't speaking to the failure of that thing. It's speaking to the growth of our knowledge. Oh, how can we improve this for the people that we want to ultimately impact?
Yeah. So, it's a lot about a mindset shift as well.
We do a lot of talking as a team about mindset. And so I think that what the biggest thing for me has been learning how to be vulnerable, how to be honest about when I'm having a day where, because a lot of life happens. It still keeps going. There's deaths in the family. There's tragedy. There's
absolutely
kids growing up, figuring out life and stress and all of that. And making it okay to say, I don't have to dive into all of the details. Yeah. But to say, hey, I'm having a really rough week this week, and I feel like I'm dropping some things. And can you guys help me with that? Yeah. Tune in to, it would be helpful setting up the mindset that, like, it is helpful for me when you gently remind me, like, hey, I didn't know that's what we were going to do or what we were talking, that wasn't the path. That's been extremely helpful to model that, because guess what? I get a whole lot less surprises too, because my team now knows they can say the same. If I'm not doing it, they're not going to, no matter how many.
Wow. A lot of lessons learned. So tell the audience how they can find out more about the collective and the work that you all are doing.
Yes, absolutely. So you can find us on the platforms. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So we are Transcend Leadership Collective. You can find us at transcendleadershipcollective.com. And if you are a podcast listener, you can find us on Confessions of a Terrible Leader, where we dive in every week, and like we just did with you, and have these conversations about, man, what are the lessons we learned the hard way that we don't want someone else to have to go through, or at least learn how to navigate if you're in the middle of it better than I did the first time. So, yeah.
Well, you're such an example of how at any point in time in your journey, you can really take a pause and shift and rebound so successfully and continue to grow and be better and evolve and improve, and then get to a point where you are transcending and helping other people to do the same thing. So I appreciate your vulnerability. Yeah. Obviously, the work that you do, the message that you send, and the opportunity that you provide people to be vulnerable as well and share their story and be more aware and know that they're not alone in some of those struggles. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. This will help others find us and benefit as well. The Compassionate Climb podcast represents the opinions of Julia Napini and her guests. The information provided is intended for educational purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice. If that is what you are seeking, please consult an attorney.